Okay, Ralph, it's good.
Thanks, Bryan.
You're welcome.
Okay, good evening, everyone. We will reconvene the Township Board of Education meeting for Tuesday, December 8th, 2020. Mr. Smythe, could we have a roll call, please?
Yes, we can. Thank you. Mr. Gartz?
Present.
Mr. Hall?
Here.
Mr. Krupa?
Hear me? I'm here.
Yeah, thank you. Ms. Mangan?
Here.
Mr. Nasser?
Here.
Mr. Sanfilippo?
Here.
Ms. Stites?
Here.
Mr. Wondrak?
Here.
And Mr. Agnesiu?
Here. Thank you. Okay, before we get to our special presentation, I am going to turn it over to Dr. Handerhan for an update.
Thank you very much, Mr. Agnesiu. Good evening. I would like to begin by thanking every member of the Wall Township Public School team. This year has brought challenges to our schools like never before, but thanks to the commitment of the employees and the cooperation, patience, and support of students and parents, we are able to continue to take these compounding challenges head on. I know I am not the only one who looks forward to the high school and primary school reopening for in-person instruction this Thursday. Since September, and as of 4 p.m. today, the number of positive COVID-19 cases across the district is as follows: 67 positive and 2 presumed positive. Presumed positive indicates that individuals declined to take the COVID-19 test. When that happens, individuals are required to quarantine, and it is treated as if they are indeed positive for COVID for all intensive managerial purposes. That number breaks down to 50 or 52 students, depending on how you want to classify the presumed positives, and 16 staff members. Wall High School, 31 students, which includes the 2 presumed positives, and 4 staff members. Wall Intermediate School, 8 students and 4 staff members. Pre-K through grade 5 throughout the district, throughout all of the schools, 13 students and 6 staff members. I have received several requests about sharing this information on the website. While I understand the importance of and demands for transparency, I must take steps to maintain as much confidentiality as possible. These COVID-19 positive numbers are not merely statistics. They are associated with people, Wall Township students and staff. This is medical information. At this point, gratefully, the numbers in the elementary schools spread across the 5 buildings, the 4 elementaries and the primary school, and also the virtual schools are still very low. When the numbers of positive cases reach a point where individuals are no longer identifiable, I will certainly post this information on the website. I have also received questions about notifications of exposures in schools. If a student tests positive and has been in school where others have been exposed, the class or contacts are notified in writing, and close contacts are spoken to individually. If the student is a virtual student and has not been on campus, there is no exposure. Therefore, no exposure letter is sent home to the families. However, when I receive this information about a student in the virtual program, that when I get the result that there is a COVID positive, I do report these positive cases in the district statistics. They are included in the numbers that I shared this evening. Similarly, if a student is quarantined and during the quarantine, the student tests positive, the case is reviewed for potential exposure. To illustrate, consider this example. If a parent tests positive, their child is immediately quarantined. If on, say, day 10 of the child's quarantine, the child starts showing symptoms, they were not in school during their contagious period according to the CDC and Health Department guidelines. In this case, an exposure letter would not be sent home because no one was exposed at school. I have received a few inquiries regarding the number of quarantines. Early in my COVID-19 communications, I shared that the number of quarantines is a fluid number. At this particular juncture, the term fluid does not seem to be an appropriate descriptor. Since our region has been deemed at high risk or at the orange level, school districts must follow more stringent quarantine protocols. Specifically, any student or staff member that is exhibiting COVID-like symptoms, even just one, depending on the symptom, will need to quarantine. And any person that was deemed to have close contact with this person will also need to quarantine. The results has been many students and several staff members throughout the district have been quarantined. To give you an illustration of the prevalence of quarantines, I offer the following scenario. A student develops a cough while at school. The child is seen by the nurse and sent home to quarantine. The contact tracing process begins. The school nurse and/or the principal communicates with the teacher and reviews classroom seating, charts, and identifies close contacts. Then transportation is contacted and the bus seating charts are sent to the school. In some cases, bus videotapes are reviewed. Once again, the principal and/or the nurse identifies any individuals that are in close contact. This is not only are students considered close contact, but faculty as well. If the student is involved in any, and of course staff is faculty and staff, if the student is involved in any in-person extracurricular activities, that level of contact tracing must be pursued as well. With the more stringent orange quarantine protocols, it is not uncommon for 10 or more individuals, mostly students, to be mandated to quarantine. To recap, 10 or more individuals could be quarantined based on one child coughing at school. Please extrapolate this across the 7 schools in our district and couple it with more than one child in each school exhibiting a symptom. I cannot begin to share with you how labor-intensive this process can be given the increased volume of orange-level quarantines. It has consumed many hours each day since we were required to follow these orange protocols. But in order for this district to continue to provide in-person instruction, it is what we must do. I am so grateful for the level of commitment our administrators and nurses display each day to the children of this district. It is through their efforts that we are able to sustain in-person instruction. As long as we are at the orange level, we will need to continue this high volume quarantining to provide in-person instruction. I realize having a teacher or a child needing to quarantine is taxing to the family impacted. I wish we didn't have to quarantine visibly healthy children who happen to sit within 6 feet of someone with a cough on a school bus, but we have no choice. Our only alternative is all virtual instruction. Be assured, the unwavering goal of this district is to provide as much in-person instruction to the children as we possibly can. I ask for patience and understanding through this difficult time. Also, if your child tests positive during a quarantine, please share this information with the school, in particular the school nurse or the principal. Additionally, if you have questions, please reach out to your child's school. Just ask. I can tell you that there are rumors and half-truths circulating, and this type of activity can be very distracting. All of our focus needs to be on educating the children of this district in the safest environment possible. Another question that has come up is the recently revised CDC guidance for scenarios that may shorten a required quarantine to 7 to 10 days, as opposed to the 14-day mandate. In its December 3rd update, the New Jersey Department of Health indicates, and I quote, "Given substantial community spread of COVID-19 throughout New Jersey, NJDOH continues to recommend quarantine for 14 days where feasible to reduce the risk of spread of COVID-19, and particularly for persons who live with or care for persons at high risk of severe complications for COVID-19, specifically older adults, persons with underlying conditions, or obesity, and pregnant women were named specifically in this quote." I wish to draw attention to this particular phrase, 14 days where feasible. This sentence fragment is problematic. It is problematic for school districts across the state of New Jersey. Following this NJDOH guidance, all of the Monmouth County local health departments have taken the unified stance that they will continue to recommend the 14-day quarantine. Please be mindful that the decisions we make as individuals can impact others in this community. I ask that you remain vigilant with prevention protocols with the approaching holidays. We need to stay the course. I would like to reiterate my appreciation for the staff, students, and parents of this district. These times are extremely trying, and we must continue to meet these challenges. I am confident that better days are ahead. Thank you. Mr. Adonisio, back to you.
Thank you, Dr. All right. With that, did anybody have any questions for Dr. Hanrahan? No? Okay, seeing none. We will move on to our special presentation from Mr. Squirrello. Good evening.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you. So when the Board of Education hired our firm as board counsel, they had asked us if we, from time to time, would make presentations on the operation of the district, the operation of the Board of Education at public board meetings, so the members of the public could see the kind of issues that we consider on an ongoing basis. So one of the conversations that I had in our first workshop with the Board of Education was whether or not we should consider operating the Board of Education as a committee of the whole or a committee of board of or as a board of committees. So I thought I'd take about 15 or 20 minutes this evening just to explain the difference between those two operations, to provide some information on the pros and the cons and the characteristics of each of those informations. Boards of Education in New Jersey operate one of three ways. They operate as a committee of the whole, they operate as a board of committees, or they operate in some kind of a hybrid. About 15% of, regardless of what they do, all of the guidelines for how they operate are found in board policy. The descriptions of how they do things, the regulations on how they do things, are also found in board policy. So about 15% of boards of education in the state of New Jersey operate as a committee of the whole. So I'm going to go down 5 characteristics or 5 little sections, both on the committee of the whole and on a board operating as a board of committee, and I'll go back and forth between them. So if you've got a piece of paper and you're taking notes and you want to take notes, one sheet of paper, you can draw a line down the middle, draw 4 lines across, so we end up with 10 little squares. The first of those squares in the first of those squares is that board policy describes the organization, and board policy provides a description and the responsibilities of how we operate. The second of those squares is the different characteristics between a committee of the whole and a board of committees. 15% of the boards of education in the state of New Jersey operate as a committee of the whole. What that means is, for everything that Board of Education does it subject to the Open Public Meetings Act, meaning there are more than 5 members there. The entire board is there. The full board participates in every single discussion. And the only committees are a special committee or an ad hoc committee that is temporary in nature and does not exist from year to year on the Board of Education. So the characteristics are: operates as a full board, participates in every single discussion, Every member of the board gets every piece of paper that every other member gets, and it's subject to the Open Public Meetings Act, meaning there are no impromptu board meetings. Every board meeting is noticed at least 48 hours in advance. Minutes are taken of every single board meeting. It provides 2 opportunities for the public to respond. In a board of committees, about 55 to 60% of the boards of education in the state of New Jersey operate as a board of committees. And I'm sure someone in the public is going to say, where did you get your numbers? These numbers come from the New Jersey School Boards Association and were updated through the fiscal year of 2019. So we do not have the information through June of 2020. We have this information through June of 2019. A board of committees has a number of standing committees that operate on a permanent basis from year to year. A policy committee, maybe a building and grounds or facilities committee, a finance committee, a negotiations committee, a personnel committee, a human resources committee. Those committees meet on a regular basis, generally once or twice between board meetings. They're not subject to Oprah. The board president names the members of those committees, and each committee gets a committee chair. Typically, based on the survey done by the New Jersey School Boards Association, a board that operates with a board of committees, the committees meet on average 2 to 3 times more than the board meets in its regular meetings. So it's possible that a committee structure would mean that board members would meet 2 to 3 times a month in addition to their meetings at Board of Education meetings. So we have a committee of the whole versus a board of committees. We have 15% on the committee of the whole. We have about 55 to 60% on the board of committees. What's the benefit of each of these operations? Let's look at the board as a whole first. When we look at the board operating as a committee of the whole, every debate and discussion, every issue is discussed by the full board. The administration runs the discussion. This probably expands the debate because you have typically 9 people participating. All of the board members get all of the information at once, and no one kind of feels left out if there's a feeling of being left out. That's the pro to having a committee of the whole. What about a board of committees? In a board of committees, based on the survey information provided by the New Jersey School Boards Association, a board of committees believed that the committees discuss information more thoroughly. It divides up the responsibilities for the operation, believing that it increases efficiency. And committee chairs get appointed and or elected depending upon the structure. In some structures, the board president would appoint a committee chair. In some structure, once the board president appoints the committee elects the chair. This shares leadership, and it trains leaders for future positions so that someone who may think about being a board president gets to operate as a board chair first, directing discussions of the board committee. And it requires trust. Typically, when you have a board of committees, you have a situation where the board members trust each other, because if I'm on the personnel committee and not on the policy committee, I am listening to what the members of the policy committee tell me. They're listening to what I tell them as the personnel committee. We're not sharing the intimate details of each of our committee structures. So those are the benefits as seen by board members throughout the state of New Jersey to the 2 different structures. What about the negatives? On a committee of the whole, the primary negative is the fact that it's extensive time commitment. That based upon the information provided, it tends to lengthen the board meeting. And as a result of that, can every board member take the time to look at every single issue, even if it's an issue that they're not interested in? Or is that someplace where they sit back? And the time constraint, the fact that there's just virtually a fatigue factor that weighs in when you have a Board of Education meeting, does that time constraint limit the discussion? While everybody's getting the information, is the actual discussion limited because of the time required? With respect to a board of committees, some boards of education, more than a majority of them, view a con as it may just be too many committees. It might just be too much of a demand on people's time. And maybe board committees have an unequal balance of power, in that certain committees are considered to be more powerful than others. So, and there's a question from the public not seeing the operation. Do they not understand the operation? And so there's a question from the public, well, we don't see everyone operating as we see in a committee of the whole. What about the best practices if you choose one of these two operations? The best practices if you choose one of these two operations, if you chose the committee of the whole, is the fact that you have to trust that your superintendent is going to be your leader at every board meeting where you have the committee of the whole meeting. You're going to rely on the staff to collect data. It's much more unlikely that the board members themselves are going to do the work here. And you're going to be listening to the superintendent or chief school administrator's recommendations because you won't have a committee chair. You won't have a committee structure making a recommendation. What you have is a superintendent bringing you the recommendations of staff. In a board of committees, the structure of the committee should generally be 1 to 2 people less than a quorum. So that's 3 or 4 people, depending on the function of the committee. Each committee would have a function. Each chair would have a role as the committee chair. The committee chair gets to set the agenda and run the meeting. And then annually, the opportunity to reorganize the committees so that everybody gets a chance to move around from committee to committee. So we took a look at the 4 major characteristics, the pros, the cons, and the best practices with respect to operating as a committee of the whole, the best practices as operating as a board of committees. And if we have somebody who does math, you know that we talked about 15% of the boards do a committee of the whole, 55 to 60% of the boards do a board of committees. What happens in the remaining? The remaining operate under a hybrid system. A hybrid system means that they have some standing committees, but not the number of standing committees that a board of committees would have. So the likelihood is you don't see a policy committee. The likelihood is you do see a finance committee. The likelihood is you do see a negotiations committee. The likelihood is you don't see a facilities committee. So you pick the committees that you see, and statewide survey says, but the statewide review said the 2 committees that you see the most are finance and negotiations. The rest of the committees you typically don't see. In a hybrid system, the board functions as part of a committee of the whole for the other committees. And it was interesting in the questioning on this and in the reviewing on this, it was a belief that in a committee of the whole, you would have the committee operate as the full policy committee so that every board member learned the operation of the district and the rules and regulations by which we operate the district. And for the facilities committee, it was viewed that every board member would get an opportunity to see the facilities, to get an understanding of what was needed for the facility in terms of repair and maintenance. So about 30%, somewhere between 25 and 35, but I think about 30% of the boards of education in New Jersey operate as a hybrid, which is a committee of the whole for a number of things, and typically 1, 2, and in some cases 3, but most likely 2 committees. And the most likely committees that operate are the finance committee and the negotiations committee. So, Mr. President, I tried to stay within 10 or 15 minutes of a presentation, just giving an idea on committee of the whole versus a board of committees and kind of what their pros and cons were.
Thank you, Mr. Squirrello. It was informative. Does anybody on the board have a question for Mr. Squirrello?
Mr. President,
Yes, Mr. Krupa.
I want to thank Mr. Scarella for that. I think this is a beginning, a public beginning to our boardsmanship. We've all individually done some things that we need to prepare ourselves for serving on the board. And I think the big word that was used for me, although it's not many letters, is trust. And I don't want anybody to misunderstand. I don't believe that, let me phrase it differently. I believe that the members of this board have a great trust and rapport with each other. And we are gaining that with our superintendent, who is new to the district, with our attorney, with other people that we are coming into contact with. Remember, 6 of us are a year to a year and a half into this. So I was very aware of the time commitment because it was put up in front of me numerous times by the NJSBA, 10 to 50 hours a month. That's what they said in writing. 10 to 50 hours a month is what you can expect if you are serving on the board. Now, that's an individual choice, right? Sometimes things happen, as we've had over this year to year and a half, as I'm saying, that increase that, and it's out of your control. But I do want to emphasize that I really do think that the trust is there. It's been getting stronger and gaining in strength and understanding of what each committee does. That is why we are doing what I would consider a hybrid. As a former administrator, teacher, etc., and Mr. Scarillo doesn't need me to say that the least interesting to me, although I am on that committee, and Joe, no offense, is policy, because so much of what policy does look at is often mandated by external influences, legislation, this and that. Yes, you do put a local flavor on it where it's allowed, but I really, wanted to be sure that that part about trust was said, and also that we're not static, we're fluid. As we gain that experience and boardmanship and awareness of how, you got security people, you got accountants, you got medical, you got teachers, you got nonprofit individuals on this board. It's a great amount of talent, but we're still in that learning phase. So thank you, and I hope that this continues. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Krupa. Did anybody else have any comments or questions? No? Okay, seeing none. We will move now to, in accordance with policy 0167, we will open up our special presentation to public comment, and it's for the purpose of commenting on or seeking clarification to anything in this presentation. So it only has to do with this presentation. Let's see.
Hi, Betsy Cross. I live in Wall Township. Thank you for your presentation, Mr. Scarillo. What do you consider the board is operating right now?
I think they're operating as a hybrid.
Okay. Given so many changes and a new superintendent, right now, I think you can only be committee as a whole, because everything is just all over the place. There's meetings taking place. Nobody knows they're going on. They're not posted. They're so important.
That's not true, Ms. Cross.
It certainly is, Mr. Adonisio. Here we are, 16 months later, and we have 43,000 in attorney bills on something you promised we would have so much transparency. So I am sick of it. And a lot of other people are sick of it. So everything needs to be discussed in public. We have a new superintendent. We should have a new business administrator, and we should have a lot of new board members. We just have a lot of people that don't have their head in the game, and I don't know what they're doing, but they're not worried about the kids. So,
Ms. Cross, do you have another comment on my presentation, or?
yeah, I'm surprised. I guess I'm surprised that only 15% are in the committee as a whole. Do you have some schools, like the top 10 schools, what form they're in?
So I would have to go back to School Boards Association, who does that, and find out who identified themselves as committee of the whole, and then look at that group's district factor group. I wasn't asked to do that. This was just to explain the structure and get the global view of the structure, the three structures. So I don't know that because I didn't look for it. I don't even know if, well, I guess the raw data might have it, but I don't know if School Boards Association would publish it.
Okay.
Because what you have to understand is in this structure, regardless of your structure, you can change your structure at any time. So I've had boards of education change their structure mid-year, but you can change it any time. So I don't know that answer. I don't know if that data is collected. I certainly can take a look to see if it is.
Okay, and I mean, I think the schools that are ORID probably have longstanding members that are maybe more in the hybrid approach. I don't know. This committee just really can't do it right now because they're supposed to have committee meetings minutes up on a Friday, and we don't have them 5 and 6 months later regarding Mercury. We don't have long-range facility plans. We can't find referendums. Mr.
Ms. Cross,
Smythe
do you have comments about this presentation, or are you just going to go on about stuff that's doesn't have anything to do with this?
It has everything to do with it. You need to be operating as a committee in whole and have everything done in person, tape recorded, so we can always go back to it. And people have to have their minutes done and have them posted. What is happening now is an absolute disgrace. The school district is not doing itself any favors right now. So my suggestion is committee as a whole, do everything in public. I mean, even on the screen, you don't even see Russell Gartz's name.
Ms. Cross, that has nothing to do with it. So I'm going to ask you one
It
last time.
does.
Do you have
should
any
have your
other
committee
comments about
people-
this presentation?
You should have all your committee members' names at least on the screen. It's ridiculous. We don't even know where he is. If he's in Wall, somewhere
right.
else.
Ms.
I
Cross,
don't know.
thank you. Your time is up.
Okay, thanks.
Is there anybody else for comment or questions about this presentation?
Mr. Addonizio, if there's nobody in the public, I have something to respond to.
Yes, well, closing public comment. Go ahead, Mr. Gartz.
I don't control what the screen shows, but I've been on every meeting and you go back and listen to it. I tend to participate in all of them. I would also actually support what Mrs. Cross says, and I'd encourage every member of the public who's so inclined to put their name in the hat to run for the election, as a few people did this past year. And the more people that run, the more that good things bubble up. So I don't know whose name was in the hat this year. I know who won, but it's always an option for everybody in town to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gartz. And I just, for the record, I see your name crystal clear on the screen, as I do every meeting. So I must be somebody else's faulty device. All right, we will move on. We will go to committee reports. We'll start with policy. Mr. Hall. Good evening.
Good evening. Thanks, Mr. President. Just wanted to talk about the policy meeting. We had a meeting on December 3rd, this last week in the superintendent's office. And the meeting was Dr. Hanrahan, Ms. Keeter, board members, Christine Seitz, Ralph Addonizio, Andy Krupka, and myself, who I attended virtually. We called the meeting to order at 6:07. Basically, we have a few policies, I believe 6 or 7, that Dr. Hanrahan basically led us through a discussion on them. Policy 2431 had to do with the athletic competition. So this policy, again, these are all mandated policies by state law or changes that require us to make these. This isn't us picking them out of the blue to say, hey, we feel like changing them. We're dictated to because of changes in law or guidance from the Department of Education. So the athletic competition policy talks about creating an action plan for traumatic injuries, similar to what the district does for other action plans, EpiPens, and other issues. So the scope of the policy covers all venues. So for all athletic competition. So basically, Dr. Hanrahan and her administrators need to come up with a plan for, again, for a traumatic injury, whether it's at 18th Avenue fields, whether it's at any of the schools where any competitions for grades 6 through 12 take place. Basically, the discussion, the committee talked about, how this would progress. This was obviously something that is kind of new. We've had other policies that dictate, like I said, action plans for other medical uses, but the traumatic injury one is relatively new. So we're updating our policy there. The regulation 2431, again, it basically sets up all the processes for implementing the policy. That was pretty straightforward. Policy 2464, gifted and talented students. Again, this mandated policy requires the district to develop a procedure to identify and encourage students who show a high level of ability compared to their chronological peers. This district will develop a plan and file it with the State Department of Education, which is required. The district will also be required to formulate a complaint procedure for parties that believe the district is in non-compliance. And basically, this policy will lay out what also the district has to do to notify what the notification requirements are. So again, basically, the state came in and told us this is what we have to do. Policy 6470 spot 01 is the electronic funds transfer and claimant certificate. Again, this is a new policy that's mandated. It puts in place more checks and balances on electronic transfers. So it requires that someone who does not report to the business administrator authorize electronic payments. So we had some discussion at the policy in regards to this, and it basically centered on who those people would be. And Dr. Hanrahan basically commented that she would be basically the one who would be identified as someone who would be the check for any of the outgoing electronic transfer wires. So that, again, is a mandated new policy. The regulation 6470 spot 01 is basically the same thing. The regulations are just the formal process of setting up the steps necessary to carry out the policy. So again, really no discussion on that. That was again all the things that have to be done in order for the policy to go into effect. Policy 7440 had to do with the school district security. Again, mandated policy by law requires that the district conduct a school safety audit. This audit requires the district to submit this to the New Jersey Office of the Homeland Security. This law sets up a detailed list of requirements that are to be included in this report. One of the features in the law and the policy discussed by the committee was that this report is specifically excluded from OPA requirements. So the nature of safety within the school and its operation and details will be kept confidential. And then regulation 7440, again, school district security, it's the regulation that goes hand in hand with the policy. This, again, sets up the process of setting up the steps necessary to carry out the policy. And again, that was really no discussion on that because, again, that's all boilerplate language. So I believe that was it for this go round. If I'm missing anything or misstated anything, Dr. Hanrahan, I don't know.
Mr. Hall, you did a great job.
Okay, well, I'd like to hear that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. Any questions for Mr. Hall on policy? Nope. Seeing none, we'll go to curriculum instructions. Mr. Krupa.
Okay. Hello. I want to thank Ms. Mangan. Ms.
Andy, we can't hear you too well.
All right. Well, I'm on the school Chromebook here.
There we go.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. All right. I want to thank Ms. Mangan, Mr. Sanfilippo, Mr. Wondrak for being in attendance at the meeting, which we had this week. Was it this week? Yeah, last week, December 2nd. And the items on the agenda were the midterm final exams at the high school, military opportunities, the Visual Performing Arts Academy of Monmouth County, World Language and Strategic Plan. With regards to midterm final exams and military opportunities, we were very pleased to have Ms. Sergio and Ms. Katie Misa of the Guidance Department at the meeting. This is the second time we had guests, and they provided some detail on both of those topics. With regards to military opportunities, I'm going to go to that one first, if that's okay. This came because there was some broad announcement that was sent to the districts and to boards members asking about how that is presented and included in the schools. And it was explained to us that similarly to college visitations to the school, a program like that is given to the high school students. And we got a little more detail in the sense that there's also a guidance counselor that has a specialty in military opportunities. It also was explained to us that in the sophomore year, a program that guidance uses, Naviance, helps students to identify what their proclivities might be in terms of interest for careers, their learning style, that kind of thing. So it was good to learn about that this is included as part of the many career path that a student may choose after high school. And as many of you already know, we do have a ROTC type program, which is very popular at the high school. Did I miss anything from that, Dr. Handerhan?
No, it was a really nice meeting for me because I got to learn a little more detail about the programs. And in particular, I'm extremely excited about the ability to provide the NNDC, which is in a different size version of the junior ROTC. So it was a great learning experience for me.
Yep. And Mr. Wondrak pointed out that there's often, and obviously Army STEM or STEAM program is pretty well known, with opportunities to support students with engineering and other technical art opportunities and scholarships. So that was something that was also pointed out by one of our members. With regard to midterm and finals, do you want to talk specifically to that, Dr. Handerhan? I know
Sure.
that this is something that we're going to look at, not
Absolutely.
just during COVID, but later
Yep,
on.
absolutely. Our conversation with respect to midterms and finals began with really an in-depth conversation about what is happening this year. For those of you that have students in the high school, I'm sure you are aware because Ms. Sergio has communicated this information, but in light of having a hybrid schedule, COVID has really robbed in-person instruction time. Exams typically require a significant amount of instructional time to administer. That coupled with, this is a very stressful time. Mental health in all of our buildings is always at the forefront of our priorities. And it was decided that midterms and finals would not be run this year. And we discussed that. But that begs a bigger community. It begs a different, a bigger conversation regarding, what is the future of assessments? Much of our conversation is what is school going to look like post-COVID? We don't know these answers yet, but what we do know as a result of our conversation is that we want to look a little deeper. We're winding down. We're on the back end of a strategic plan. I know that's on my to-do list to start working on one next year. And I think that certainly exams, certainly, class weighting, class, pretty much so much as far as, transcript marks really need to be revisited. It's healthy for an organization to revisit grading policies, class rank policies. It's healthy. And while we decided that this year is certainly not the time to dig deep, it's a year to start that conversation. And next year, look a little deeper into these matters. So more to come. And I look forward to really beginning some deep academic conversations for the latter half of the school year, at least to begin them. So it was a really robust conversation, and it was a good one. And it was nice to have an academic conversation. Mr. Krupa,
Yeah,
did you want to wrap?
definitely. Definitely concur with that. And somebody's speaker's gone. And as you mentioned, digging deeper, that would not be done without including all the constituents,
Correct.
students, parents, faculty, staff.
This is a community conversation, not a committee conversation.
Right. Great. So the next one would be the Visual Performing Arts Academy, which is not the first time this is on our agenda.
I'm sorry, Mr. Krupa, could you move closer to the computer? It's very hard to hear you. That mic doesn't pick it up too well.
I'm gonna get, it's how that now you're seeing every pore in my
Yeah.
But you sound great, Mr.
Oh, we can
Krupa.
hear you.
Anyway, this is not the first time the conversation on Visual Performance Arts Academy is on the agenda. We were talking about that. I don't want to say it's an extracurricular program, but it's an external program outside of the school. And this is something that the board has to look at in greater depth, especially in these times. Dr. Handrahan, do you want to give more detail?
I do. This agenda item was really an outgrowth of Mr. Wondrak's comments during past board meetings with respect to when we discussed the Monmouth County Performing Arts. When we discussed the Monmouth County Performing Arts, and Dr. Gleason was here, and the board expressed its desire to fund, to provide some financial support for students that are accepted into the Monmouth County Performing Arts Program. And so I would imagine things are moving forward in that direction with the students and applications. But that said, it's a costly program depending on the number of students that are accepted into the program. But also it begs the question, does it interact? Does it interface? Is it a complement to? Is it a substitute for our Visual and Performing Arts Academy? And that is, these are questions that I physically can't answer yet because I'm still in the learning stages. But this served as really a springboard for conversations. I need to work with, certainly the administration to really look at, this types of students that are enrolling in that have interest in the Visual and Performing Arts Academy. Look at current enrollment in the program. So there are a lot of questions, certainly more questions than answers that I have at this particular juncture. But it is, it's a very good conversation because, we want to support the students of Wall Township in the visual and performing arts, and we need to figure out the best way to do that. And is it a curricular program during the day? Is it a supplementary program available after hours? Is it a program where students leave school early? And under normal circumstances, under normal school years, non-COVID years, Monmouth County Performing Arts students for a period of time do leave high school early. That is not the case because it is a virtual program for this COVID year. So this year is such an anomaly in so many ways. So with that, there will be a lot more conversation regarding this matter, and I look forward to learning more about it. Mr. Krupa?
This year, at the beginning in January again. I think that was.
I'm sorry, I missed the first part of your question.
Does the program begin in January?
I don't think in the beginning of January, but I'm not sure. I don't know when the start dates are. I would have to look that up.
Right. And then the next item is world language. I'm going to let you speak to that.
Okay.
I know you
Well,
were
this
asked
was
about-
really an ice-breaking conversation starter. Since I have come to Wall Township, obviously most of my time has been spent on COVID preparation. But one of the things that I have been looking at is how our structure is organized, and how different administrative responsibilities are divided across the K-12 administrator, between central office, between building level leadership. So I wanted to start the conversation about where is world language as far as where the community values world languages. Different communities have different passions. Different communities want to have different flagship programs. I don't have these answers yet. And I had a lot of questions about world language. We do not have a dedicated K-12 world language supervisor like other school districts. Not all school districts, but some school districts. And, I really wanted to get a better understanding. Again, this is a conversation that's bigger than, a conference room. It's one where is undoubtedly will become a conversation starter during any kind of strategic planning and goal setting. Conversations I look forward to having with world language teachers in the district. I really haven't had the opportunity to meet a lot of people. So I really wanted to get a sense of where we are so that I can get a sense of where we may want to go. So this was really an exploratory conversation that I enjoyed immensely.
And with regards to sorry, somebody's going to use the district scope. We have a K through 12 program, right?
With respect to world language?
Yes.
Yes, we do have, we do. And it's, different school districts, especially at elementary, it's delivered differently. High school, it's pretty standard because it's a credit-based system at a high school. So there's a lot that I want to look into, but I also want to get a read on opinions, and thoughts. I am very, very fond of world language instruction. Actually, and little side note, my daughter is a Spanish major, so so I have a little, she's home after Thanksgiving, so I hear a lot about it in my home. So, spoiler alert. So. I look forward to learning more about that. And as a perfect segue, the strategic plan, it needs to come out through some strategic plan investigation. And as Mr. Krupa mentioned earlier, we did revisit our strategic plan. We started to look to see what was accomplished, because a great deal was certainly accomplished, and a lot has happened in our world in the last 9 months. And do we have to make adjustments, because it was written in a very pre-COVID world, our strategic plan, and have our priorities changed? Perhaps. I know there's certain things that are higher on my list that I never imagined would be as high on my list. So as a school district, that's something that we need to look into.
Yeah, and in fairness, the adjustments, as you said, have been made all over the place. I don't know that many, if any, school districts have had any breathing room to align whatever they're doing to the strategic plan, because everything has been on the fly due to the fact that there is a health risk associated with every decision that's being made.
Absolutely.
Locally, statewide, nationally. So that's, one of the things that normally would be a regular reporting on, but this is I don't know, it is, it's crisis management. So we're glad to know that we're putting we haven't left completely our eye off of that, but it needs to come back in at the right time, with the right opportunity, with the right mindset, because people only have so much energy, including this board, and the staff and everybody that would be involved, the students, the teachers, to address this. We're in survival mode right now, and I really appreciate everything that everybody's doing with regard to keeping education going in the district. And I know I'm speaking not only on my own behalf, but I'm sure for the rest of the people on the board, we know how hard you are all working to keep our students learning. And that's the end of our curriculum instruction.
Finance and facilities.
Thank you, Mr. Krupa. Mr. Varts, Finance and Facilities.
Yes, Mr. Smythe, I would just ask you to run through the agenda, and I will chime in as necessary if there's any comments to be made.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Gartz. First item on the agenda, school duty work order reports. This is a report that the operations department provides to the committee on a monthly basis. It shows the work orders, the status of the work orders for the prior month, prior 2 months, which ones are completed, which ones are still in progress. It's an opportunity for the board to ask questions and an opportunity for the operations department to bring to light any issues that may exist within the district. Anything on the status analysis from school duty? I will make as a note, the committee, when we met, we discussed the report, and we are going to look to provide some improvements to it to make it more user-friendly in the future. Okay, I'll move on unless there's any.
Can't hear you, Brian. You're on mute.
Mute.
Sorry, I'll take the paperwork off my space bar. I'm sorry. The next item is the enterprise accounts update. The first item is the food service program. For the month of November, I was in the black, $17,500, or resulting in a month-end profit. That brings our year-to-date at $38,378 in the black, which is a nice milestone for this time of year in November. With the high school going virtual for the last 2 weeks approximately, that's going to have an impact on December. But again, we're optimistic through the year based on the meals that are being provided. And again, take this opportunity for the parents that are out there that we provide grab and go lunches at the end of the day at all the schools, at the high school, the intermediate school, and all of the K-5 elementary schools. All students are eligible for free lunch. The school district submits those lunch counts to the Department of Agriculture, and the district receives reimbursement for those lunches that are provided. I will also take this opportunity to remind people that do qualify for free and reduced, and no circumstance change throughout the year, that it will be important that between now and the end of this school year that you make application if you do qualify for free and reduced, so that at the beginning of the school year next year in September, there's a rollover period of 30 days from prior year students that carries through into September. And that's important because in this new year, the applications that are submitted do not become effective until into the month of October. So it's important that at the end of this year, applications are submitted, approved. It's a automatic renewal, and it carries you through the month of September. So we will remind that to our parents on a monthly basis. With regard to the wraparound program, we're serving a little over 200 students at the 4 elementary schools. For the month of November, we essentially broke even. There was a loss of approximately just under $60 And that is a result of the guidelines changing with regard to how many staff or how many students we can have with a staff member. How staff members or supervisors can supervise more than one group or switch from one group to another group in the course of a day. As the guidelines or restrictions fluctuate throughout the year, so will our staffing and how we run the program. But with the numbers that we saw in November, we're optimistic that at least through the next couple months we'll be at this break-even point. And with regard to the continuing the program, whether we were to continue the program in its current status or to end the program in the near future, we would still be in the situation where we are, where the year to date is at a negative 35,000, where we would have to supplement the RAP program from the general fund. So, we discussed this in committee. We're looking to move forward, and hopefully we'll get additional participation in the program, which would just look to increase the bottom line for the program so that we can get to that break-even point by the end of the year. Okay. The communication system upgrade project, that is for expanding the public address system in all the schools to provide better speakers in locations where what is there is not quite adequate due to the surrounding noise, supplementing what is there by putting additional speakers on the outside of the building, and also providing new speakers in locations that we're lacking with regard to the communication at the standard that we desire in all of our schools. The project is on schedule as previously discussed, in that we will be advertising for bids next week. We'll be advertising in the paper on the 17th. We will be receiving bids on January 14th with the intention of awarding a contract at the board meeting that is tentatively scheduled for January 19th, but will be dependent on a reorganization meeting in January. But that is the schedule. If we award in the middle to the end of January, we would anticipate with lead times for delivery of equipment that the contractor will be able to get into the schools hopefully in the beginning of March in order to start the project. But we will try to expedite as much as possible to get them in there as soon as after contracts are signed. Okay. The next item is our high school tennis court lighting. We had one of our light stanchions. I apologize, I don't recall the date, but it was a date on a Sunday night when it was really windy. One of our light poles came down. And fortunately, in the direction that it fell, it did not hit anything else. It missed an electrical panel station by about 2 feet. Landed on a sidewalk, didn't hit the tennis court fencing or the utility pole. So in that sense, we were fortunate. However, there was obviously significant damage to the light pole. We had contacted the insurance company, obtaining documentation for the submission to the insurance company to have repairs made and also be covered under insurance. But we also contacted the architect, brought out the engineer to inspect the remainder of the site lighting that was there. And we are currently reviewing that recommendation, which currently is to replace the light poles that serve the tennis court. But we are in the process of reviewing that recommendation. It'll be discussed further through the F&F committee. We'll obviously have to obtain pricing, see what will be covered by our insurance company. And once we have some additional information, we'll be able to move forward with what decision we're going to make with regard to that site lighting. I will note that there was an additional light stanchion that was intentionally lowered. So if anybody was out at the tennis courts, there are 2 that are currently resting on the ground. The one toward the back right is the one that failed and fell. The one to the closest to the faculty parking lot and closest to the superintendent building, we were not comfortable with the condition of it, so we had a local contractor come in and lower the pole and rest it on the ground. But the other 2 are okay in their current condition until we take further action. Questions, comments on the tennis court lighting? No? With regard to the custodial and maintenance staffing, this was discussed also at the Finance Facilities Committee. Mr. Moretta, our facilities manager, was not present. However, he had done an analysis on the staffing in the district, made a recommendation with regard to the district needing additional custodial staff, primarily, first off on providing staff or substitute staff to deal with absences within the department. In current state, we're not in a position where we can, what is commonly referred to as pickups, or divide an absent employee's area by other employees in the district. So we're looking to have sufficient staff that would be able to cover those absences. The committee came out with a recommendation that we are going to post and look to hire 3 custodians for the department. They can be considered substitute custodians, but on a full-time basis, so that we can have them fill any absences in any of the schools, as well as supplement the staff when there are in fact no absences. In addition to that, we will also continue to maintain substitute custodians for on-call needs when we do have absences in that department. Any additional comments on custodial staffing? Okay. The district self-insured health benefits plan, open enrollment. We've had our special open enrollment for the New Jersey Educators Health Plan that is required to be offered and will be effective on January 1. The special open enrollment will close Thursday, this Thursday, December 10th. We've had a significant response from the staff with regard to the survey that we put out there of approximately almost 500 employees responding, or just under, and that's approximately what we anticipated that we would have respond. We have membership in our benefits plan. It fluctuates through the year, but it's between 480 and 500 employees. We anticipated some additional employees enrolling. So we are currently comparing our current enrollment in our benefits plan with those that responded to the survey. We will review that list tomorrow that we update, and anyone who has not responded to the survey, we will be in contact with to make sure that their intentions are provided through the survey, and if they choose to go into the plan, that they do so, that they're cognizant in doing so. Otherwise, we will look to have them maintain their current level of benefits. Based on the numbers we received, we have about 26 employees that will be going into the New Jersey Educators Health Plan. Approximately 14 of them is on a voluntary basis or by choice, and the other 12 are mandated because their employment start date was after July 20th or July 1 of 2020. And as required by the law, any new employees that were hired after July 1, 2020, they are required to be moved into the New Jersey Educators Health Plan as of January 1. And as noted, as I mentioned, the other, we have approximately about 14 employees that are by choice enrolling in the New Jersey Educators Health Plan.
Bryan?
Yes.
I just think it's important to note, I know you said it, but only because, again, I have a wife who's a teacher and is going through the same thing about notifying her business administrator of her decision of to stay or to go. I think it's important for you, that the teachers know that if they don't have a response into you, you will be keeping track and finding out exactly what everybody wants to do. So it's not like anybody's going to forget or whatever. You'll stay on top of that and make sure that if they haven't responded, you'll track them down. I mean, as best you can through emails or whatever to get them to make a decision one way or the other.
Yeah, that is correct. We sent out the initial notice that went out with all additional information, spreadsheets, et cetera. That was have to get the date. It was on a Friday. We sent it again on Monday. I sent another reminder this morning that the special open enrollment will end at 4 o'clock on Thursday, December 10th. I also included in there that if you have taken the survey, there's no need to take it again unless you're looking to change your selection, because we have left it open so that if somebody did change their mind during the period of open enrollment, they had that opportunity to update it, whether to enroll or to maintain their current benefits. But what we also said is, in addition to anyone who has not actively responded to the survey, that we will contact them, although we hope we don't need to in that situation. We hope everybody does respond based on all the notices that are going out. But in addition, anyone who we have the result of the survey that says that they chose by choice to go into the New Jersey Educators Health Plan, that we will confirm that with them, that was in fact that their intention, that was intentional, that they are looking to leave their current benefits, and that they are actively choosing to go into the New Jersey Educators Health Plan. We do have, it's understandable. You hit submit, it tells you that it was submitted, but you don't get a confirming email like you do, on Amazon or some other applications. So therefore, they were contacting us, and we would verify it by looking at the results of the survey. But we put it out there that, rest assured that, if you're concerned about remaining in your current level of benefits, that's not going to move you unless we've been in contact with you and you've actually confirmed that.
Gotcha. Great. Thank you.
Okay. All right. The second item with regard to the health benefit plan is our stop loss renewal for January 1. We have our broker, Brown & Brown Metro, that has gone out to 14 providers for the stop loss insurance. They received 4 responses. A number of them decline to quote or don't respond because for the most part, they can't be competitive with our current rates, so therefore they don't respond. But again, as a reminder of what our stop loss insurance is, we are self-insured. So therefore, rather than paying a private provider or the state as an enrollment in the state health benefits plan, rather than paying a fixed monthly premium for all the employees that are enrolled in the plan, we're self-insured. So we fund our own insurance in that we pay the claims, the medical claims, and the prescription claims. With regard to our dental insurance, we are not self-insured. That is through a private carrier. It's through Delta Dental. But the medical and prescription, we're self-insured, so we pay the actual claims, and we are reinsured to protect us, against claims that would be considered higher than what we anticipate or what we include in our annual school budget. So our stop loss insurance provides protection over $125,000 for a particular member. So therefore, we cover the cost of claims on the aggregate for the year up to $125,000, and then the stop loss provider would cover or reimburse the district on any costs that would be in addition to that. Additionally, we are covered in the aggregate for approximately $2 million over what our expected claims would be, up to the maximum claims, and then it would revert back to the district. In the almost 11 years that we've been self-insured, since 2011, we've never reached our expected claims. We've never had to utilize the stop loss insurance on the aggregate. However, we have used it a number of times, or it has been applied with regard to individual stop loss where claims exceeded $125,000 for a member enrolled in our plan. But they solicited to 14 providers. We have 4 responses. The recommendation is to renew with our current provider, Horizon Blue Cross Blue Shield. It is noted that they also are our third-party administrator for the plan. Which the benefit in that is we receive their discounts because they are our third-party administrator, and because it's grouped with the stop loss They tend to be very competitive. For the year renewal, which is based on a calendar year, our stop loss goes January through December. The end result in the increase is 5%. The initial submission of their quote was a 9% increase, but at the end of the process, in soliciting quotations, or Brown & Brown soliciting quotations or pricing for our stop loss, the end result was a 5% increase. Half of this premium, or the $783,790, which is included in the spreadsheet as one of the attachments, will be funded out of the current school year, the 2021 school year that we are currently in. And the balance, or the July through December, would be funded in next year's budget to 21-22. That provides us a benefit in that we know half the year's actual cost for when we're budgeting. And with regard to the increase for the current year, we budgeted approximately little over $770,000 for our stop loss insurance. And if you take our current premium of $746,000 and the renewal of January of $783, kind of averages just under what we budgeted, or approximately little over $760,000. So it's within our budget number of $771,000, because it averages out to be about $766,000. So we're quite comfortable with the recommendation, with the quote, as it relates to our current budget. Questions on the stop loss? Okay. Budget planning for the 21-22 school year has started. We've opened up our budget projection module and made it available to the departments and school buildings so that they can start preparing, or actually entering the information they've been preparing this fall with regard to their budget for next year. We provide a tentative budget calendar that is an attachment. We also include in there tentative budget workshop meetings, or budget only workshop meetings. Again, they can be revised. We don't have a school board, a Board of Ed meeting schedule, although it's anticipated to be the second and third Tuesday of each month. This calendar, although tentative, is scheduled anticipating that meetings would be the second and third. But again, this is tentative and can be revised. It's also going to be dependent on when we receive information from the Department of Education with regard to the download on the software for the budget that we must use in submitting the budget to the Department of Education, as well as our state aid notice and the budget schedule that is provided by the Department of Education, which will dictate when our public hearing is. But we have a tentative schedule of April 27th for the public hearing, but again, that is still to be determined. Questions on the budget or the budget calendar? Okay, seeing none, the last item is our long-range facility plan and a referendum timeline, and it's early on the agenda, although planning and reviewing the long-range facility plan, what should be long-term goals, what are short-term goals. This is going to be reviewed and considered with regard to the preparation of the 21-22 school year annual school budget, which projects the district feels are a priority and should be included in that budget. We have to weigh that with regard to what budgets would be better suited for a potential referendum, because in a referendum, the district receives 40% state aid toward the project as long as the project costs qualify, which, not to go into the weeds on that, but if it's educational or is utilized for education, such as the interior of the school buildings, or directly related to the school buildings, then it should qualify for 40% funding. So there's big advantages to debt service aid with regard to a referendum. But this is something that is going to be continually discussed by the Finance Facilities Committee. They've asked for a referendum timeline with regard to how it relates to our debt service. And just give you an idea how early we're projecting, we have our debt service, our last significant payment or large payment with regard to our debt service will be in the 23-24 school year. So we will have debt coming off our books in the 24-25 school year. So in planning to manage our debt, we would be looking at the latest having a referendum in December of 23 or January of 2024, so that we could, the referendum is successful, you can have the bond sales and it could be on our books for the 24-25 school year. And the idea of that, and with proper planning, and the reason why it's being discussed this early in the terminology of a referendum is, again, one, the advantages of funding projects through a referendum due to the debt service aid that we receive, but also we're going to have significant debt coming off. So if the district was to go to a referendum, the intention would be, or the possibility would be, that it could be a tax neutral referendum. But that, again, will be in conjunction with the strategic plan that was discussed earlier, in looking at the long range facility plan, what the priorities are, what projects will be moved up earlier and included in an annual school budget, which projects will be funded through the capital reserve account. But in managing the annual school budget and managing your debt, it would be important and highly recommended that prior to the 24-25 school year, Walt Township Schools goes out for a referendum and puts debt back on the books on a long-term basis, whether it be a 15-year, 20-year, or even 25 years. We have significant projects that need to be done. That's been previously identified in the assessment done by the architect. We have identified that in that assessment, in the preparation of the long-range facility plan. They have been prioritized in prior meetings. Again, that has to continually be reviewed and updated, but proper management of district finances and the annual school budget, as well as the debt, would dictate that the district would be going out for a referendum prior to the debt coming off the books in the 24-25 school year. We will refine the schedule so that we're not going to wait till January of 2024 or December of 2023. We'll work backwards to see what would be the most advantageous schedule and meet the deadlines for submission to the Department of Education and to the County Board of Elections with regard to having a special election for those purposes. So this is, I know it's that was a lot of information, but again, it was supposed to be a broad brush overview and the importance of having this on the agenda on a monthly basis. And this will continue to be drilled down by the Finance Facilities Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Smythe. Mr. Anisio, if I could just summarize a little bit of what Mr. Smythe just said. So in the F&F committee meetings, we've devised our agenda to look backwards at where our reports are, school dude, enterprise accounts, or whatever kind of quarterly reports tell us how we've been doing. And then we're looking at our current challenges, as you see in the middle of this agenda, and we're constantly talking budget and long range planning. And to Mr. Smythe's statement of preparing, we want to be out in front of it. We want to plan for it accordingly. We want to look at the long range facility plan and factor in items that we can put into our annual budget that will not be in the referendum, or defer things to the referendum, that make more sense to do it that way. And the other big piece of it, as everybody knows, is the economic cycle and where we are with things and how the world moves forward from here and how that affects us as Walt Township Schools. So I think we're being prudent, and that's all we're trying to do, is be prudent and have these discussions in a very regular type of circumstance. So we have a foot in the past, see how we're doing there. We're mostly in the present, but we always have a foot in the future as well. So happy to answer any questions that the board might have about the agenda or topics discussed.
Anybody?
Mr. President.
Yes, Mr. Krupa.
Thank you. I just have one comment. I think it is important that we stay ahead of this, because this topic, while it is properly in the F&F committee, is really touching upon each of the committees. We even mentioned it during instruction, if you remember, Aaron, Ken, and Chris, with regards to how increased population in the district will impact instruction and curriculum. And so we know already, just by driving around town, that there are developments going up, and we have to be prepared. I think we should look towards other districts that have been successful and capitalize on their experience, and continue to extol the virtues of Wall's educational system and how it will be served well and better served in the future. And I think it's really important, because when people understand, they support. And I don't want us to be in a situation where we're overcrowded or not prepared to deal with the influx of students, possibly with these developments going on around us. So thank you, and for doing this, finance and facilities, and Dr. Hand to Hand, and Mr. Smythe, just that suggestion now that we look at other districts. I know Ramsey and Dr. Murphy, the superintendent there, gave a workshop at the last New Jersey School Boards that was in person, and I found it very valuable to listen to their experience.
Thank you, Mr. Krupa. Anybody else?
Hey, Ralph, can I say something real quick?
Sure. Yeah, go ahead.
I to build off of what Russell had said, and Andy to a certain extent, the referendum, it seems to be coming off as like a dirty word for a lot of people in town. And I think it's fair to say that if we're going through and redesigning our long-range facilities plan, we as the F&F and as a board need to be able to look at the aggregate of all the projects, maybe not necessarily everything that was included in the presentations last year, but a pared down realistic goal, and look at it in a way that best benefits the community, not just in a educational sense, but in a financial sense. And I say that because there's a fair amount of financial engineering that is it happens every day in what we do. And to immediately dismiss a referendum, it sets up a scenario where we don't have all the tools that we can take advantage of and do things in the most cost-effective way for the community. So I know that it is a big subject, and it has a stigma of being negative in many cases, but it's important for us to focus on the fact that, as Mr. Smith so kindly pointed out, there are financial benefits, whether it's 40% payment of the coupon every month or every quarter. So don't immediately dismiss that tool that we have for the overall goal of improving the district and achieving hopefully what's on the long range facilities plan, and what comes out of a strategic plan that we hopefully do next year.
Thanks, Tom. Chris?
Yeah, I mean, just a couple things. I mean, clearly with the referendum, we have a bunch of moving targets. We have, units that are being built in this town that's going to, impact the demographics of the town and the number of students. So we had that demographic study that was done last year. and, it was sort of, open-ended and saying, well, let's see how many units are going to be built. So, we still have to, kind of get those numbers and, have a firm grip on what's going on. I think the other, portion of it is coming out of COVID. What is going to be, sort of our, the priorities of the district? I remember, thinking last year, all of those rooms that had multi-use capabilities and things like that, that you could, you could bring kids in for this and then bring kids in for that and shuffle them around and, thinking, man, that's amazing. That's, it's beautiful. It's technology, it's all this stuff. And then, coming out of COVID, now all of a sudden you're like locking the kids in the room, like, don't go to that room, now stay here, So, I mean, all of those things, I think, like I said, are moving targets. And I just think, I mean, it's important for us, I think, to, understand. I think it's important for the community to understand that. And, I know that we're going to do, our best due diligence to, find out, what the best road ahead is. And I think, one of the things, is maybe to, sort of get a glimpse, and whether it's surveys, different things like that of, the daily life of right now in COVID, because God willing, we're out of this, whenever we're out of this, whether it's a year or something like that, the priorities, might shift, and you sort of get out of something and you're a few months down the road from it, and you don't necessarily think, oh, well, I don't know if we necessarily, need all those things as much. But I mean, those are just kind of like thoughts that, that kind of rang through my head, as Russ was talking and Adam was talking and Andy was, speaking about it. And those are, things that I think are important that we need to, make sure that we highlight and capture.
Thanks, Chris. Anybody else? Erin?
Being that this is my last workshop meeting, I just want to elaborate on this discussion. I feel like it's a huge part of the community input into the referendum, potential referendum at this point, that the stakeholders really need to be involved so that they feel a part of the process, and linking it to the strategic plan is instrumental into moving forward and to having everybody's support in this. Obviously, it's for our children. It's to improve their educational experience, so that way later on in life, they can go further. So I just really want to reiterate the fact that it really needs to be a collective decision between the stakeholders of the community, the teachers, the faculty, the staff, the administration. This needs to be a huge undertaking that everybody supports.
Thank you. Anybody else? Seeing none, we will go to old business and / new business. And with that, I will turn it over to Mr. Scarillo for an update.
Thank you, Mr. President. I had put on the website that we would provide an update this evening with respect to the trailer audit. So I just have a few comments with respect to that activity. As of today's date, our office has looked at over 6,000 pages of documents. We now have a list of documents that logs approximately 1,630 different documents containing multiple pieces of paper. That log of documents is 39 pages long. When we complete our report, of course, all of those documents and the log are going to be available to the public. As part of that, we have received responses from the Department of Education and reviewed those. We've received responses from the architect. We've received responses from the New Jersey Department of Health. And we are currently awaiting responses from the New Jersey Environmental Protection Agency. We've communicated with the Monmouth County Prosecutor's Office. Just for the members of the public, the Prosecutor's Office has now closed their investigation. They've determined there's no criminality. So we have been talking to them about the information that they might have that we have not seen, and we'll take a look at that. We are in the process of looking at some video footage. We have not seen that yet, but that's being made available to us. So we will be contacting individuals who we paused the interviews for based upon the prosecutor's office activity. So we will now be contacting those individuals within the next, I would say, 3 to 7 days to schedule those appointments at a mutually convenient time. So we're beginning to move this process forward. We're looking forward to, we think that the light at the end of the tunnel is not a train. So we are looking forward to moving ourselves into the next phase and completing this project. I would like to say that I have a firm date for completion, but we are targeting now mid to late February. But I will, as soon as we schedule the interviews, I'll have a better feel for when the process will be complete. So I just wanted to provide that update. I promised I would do that at this time. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Scarillo. Okay, any questions from anybody on the board? Nope. Okay, seeing none. At this time, we will open up for public comment. Hi,
it's Betsy Cross. I live in Wall Township. Just wanted to go over, I know you were going over the Monmouth County Arts Program. Could you be a little bit more definitive on what you're thinking about? How much money is allocated for it? These students have worked very hard. My son had his interview on Sunday. So, you know, he's really looking forward to the program. So we're hoping to, I guess, know by, what is your next meeting? Next week? But, you know, next week, last week you spent so much time on this. I mean, this week I really expected a little bit more. If you'd like to talk to my son about it, he'll talk to you about it. He'll sing for you. He'll do whatever you want. You know, I know you keep talking about, you know, reaching out to the kids. This would be his third year, so reach out to him. It's a great, great program. He's learned so much. He can't talk enough about it. So, you know, we do so much for the athletes. We need to start worrying about the kids in the fine arts program. And we live in Wall. We would like it paid for. Let's see what else. On the investigation, thank you for your update, Mr. Scarillo. I've given you a list of names of people to be interviewed. You'll get more names. Just off the top of my head, you know, Office of the Auditor, and the Comptroller's Office. Ralph Adonisio had reached out to a couple of offices like last November to help with an audit. So I don't know where those documents are, but supposedly they wrote the district back.
Ms.
So
Cross, just for clarification.
Okay, don't cut me off, Ralph. It's my time to talk.
Don't invoke my name when you're not telling the truth. I did not reach out.
Look, Ralph, I always tell the truth. Always, 100%. Stop. Worry about yourself and your own problems. You've been on the phone this entire time, it looks like. Well, focus on the meeting. The problem with the prosecutor's office investigation is Mr. Smythe left out important documents that he should have given them. And some documents, I understand, were destroyed, shredded. So we need to get to the bottom of it. So
Ms. Cross, have you identified those documents and provided them to us?
Which you still don't have all the documents. Absolutely not. I still have my timeline. My timeline is going to be probably way longer than your timeline. So mine is broken out into 3 pieces: the purchase, the work that was supposed to be done, supposedly, and the demo, which never should have happened during an open criminal investigation.
Well, I think I mentioned to you in a telephone call that we're going to circle back and speak to you again.
Yeah, I mean, I'll need about 10 hours and then we'll have this all wrapped up. I'm serious.
I don't know if I have that stamina, Ms. Cross, but we'll see.
It's you know, if you want all the information, that's what you're going to need. So you'll get this done by February, believe me. But that was the problem with the prosecutor's office. Mr. Smythe did not give them the videotapes of people coming on and off the property. Look at Mr. Smythe's calendar. He never gave that to the prosecutor's office. He doesn't have anything on there of when he meets with people. His phone record should be subpoenaed, and all of his phone records, all of his text messages that he supposedly didn't have after Ralph opened them and then withdrew his Oprah request. Find it hard to believe when people were telling us at the meeting that they were texting people and there were now no texts. So I would subpoena those records should have been subpoenaed. Yes, hopefully you're here from the DEP, because I did have a couple conversations with them. You do need to speak to Bernie. You know, I've given you tons of names. All those people have to be spoken to do a legitimate investigation. and wrap this up, because now, I mean, $43,000 in bills in just this last 2 months is crazy.
Ms. Cross, just think about how many thousands of pages of documents you've sent us. We've looked at 6,000 pages of documents.
Nowhere near the 4,200 that were on the disc from Bryan. They were all, a lot of them were duplicates that he held on to, gave after
198 hours of people's time looking at information.
Right. And the main thing is these interviews with RIS, HTHI, Rocco the painter, Rich Rocco, George Cavas the painter, Ed Data. Those are all the important interviews. Like those, you know, and nobody should be talking to those people right now. Nobody on the board, not Mr. Smythe, nothing.
Thank you, Ms. Cross. Your time is up.
Hey, Ralph,
Yes, Mr. Hall.
can I just make a comment? I appreciate Mrs. Cross's enthusiasm. I really do. But I don't understand how she can, on one hand, say she wants the attorney to continue to look at and interview. I think she mentioned at least a dozen that I can, well, upwards of a dozen, I mean, half a dozen, excuse me, people she would like to be interviewed. She said 10 hours of her time just with her paperwork and more. Yet on the other hand, she's saying that the amount of money that the attorney bills of charges for the investigation is too much. So I don't understand. Either she wants him to do a thorough investigation, which is going to cost money, which we knew that when we got into this, or we just, we're spending too much money, we'll just shut it down. I mean, you know, she criticizes us for spending too much, but then she also criticizes us for, if he doesn't do the right thing. Like, I don't know how we're supposed to win with that. Like, Mr. Scarillo and his firm are highly respected. They're going to do what they need to do, and it's going to cost us what it's going to cost us. That's what we need to do to get past this whole mess. And talking about it endlessly every month just kind of goes, it doesn't get us anywhere, and it just brings down the energy for this whole community about what we're trying to do here with all the challenges we have. It's just, again, I like Mrs. Cross. I think sometimes she keeps people on her toes, and I respect that. But I think at some point you got to tell me, do you want the investigation to go on? It's going to cost money. Or it doesn't. You got to make up your mind at some point. So that's just my thoughts, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. Trying to unmute, and it's not unmuting. Oh, there we go.
Are we good?
Yes, good evening.
Hi, it's actually, my name is John Knoppel. I'm actually Tony's husband. We have 5 kids. 4 of them are in the school system. I really don't have a question, more or less. I just wanted to point something out and just to see if everybody's aware of it. A couple of things that I heard, I don't really go on these that often. I'm usually in the background. I kind of listen sometimes, but this one I was paying attention to. I heard a lot about infrastructure. I heard a lot about the welfare of the kids, language arts, a lot of passion around that, and 30,000 in the black. So for what I wanted to point out was the CARES Act. We didn't really hear anything about the CARES Act and what's out there. So for the state of New Jersey, they've awarded $722,195 for the state. If we break that down for universities and colleges, higher education was awarded $342,864,743, of which they've taken advantage of $301,718,001. Now, if we go to K through 12, where this is, I think, what's really could impact Wall, the state is awarded $310 million, $371,213, which of that amount, only $19 million has been used by the state or by the schools. It's only 6.3%. So I was wondering, when we talk about 30,000 in the black, upgrading the school infrastructure and things like that, possibly the CARES Act taking advantage of that funding could really help us with our budgeting. And as far as the language arts, the state just came out today and they released a list for grants for the arts. And the Monmouth County Arts Council, I'm not sure if that's the same thing you were talking about earlier, Dr. Handrahan, but they were awarded $6,351. And then the Monmouth County or the Monmouth Museum and Cultural Center, which may have something possibly to do with languages, that was awarded $55,200. So I was wondering, you know, are we looking to use some of this money, because there's only 3 weeks left. The state's only given us through December to use those dollars. This has been open until since, I believe, May. But we have 3 weeks left to use this money, and then it goes away. Now, that's not to say that the state doesn't award more money next year, but if they don't, this money's gone forever. And this could go towards new devices for the kids, servers for all the schools. I know of a few schools in the state that have taken advantage of this. And I was just wondering if this is something that's on your radar, because there's time's running out. Thank you for your time. And I do appreciate everybody taking the time tonight.
Thank you, John. That's a good question. And that's something we've kind of talked about before. Mr. Smythe, can you talk about that a little bit? The CARES?
Yeah, with regard to the CARES Act, each school district was provided an allocation. There's a couple different funding sources that we're receiving. Our CARES Act allocation is $236,000, I believe, rounded off. However, it does not have to be used by the end of this school year. We actually have through the end of at least 2021 to utilize those funds. We are currently utilizing them. We are funding the teachers that are instructing our virtual students. We've purchased laptop computers or Chromebooks for the students. We've provided additional instruction to students all through the funding provided through the CARES Act. And we will continue to do that through the school year.
Mr. Smythe, how did they come up with $236,000 for a wall? I guess every district's different.
Yes, and in all honesty, I don't know the breakdown, but I think it was based on a percent. It was done based on a percentage of your state aid. So therefore, we don't get a whole lot of state aid. So therefore, out of the big bucket, we didn't get a large portion of that allocated to us.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Obergard? Mrs. Obergard? Mrs. Obergard, are you there? Mrs. Obergard? All right. Try that. Mrs. Shrimp? Zoom technical difficulties. Just won't unmute. Oh.
Hello.
Well, we'll go with Samantha first, and then we'll try Ms. Obergard again. Good evening.
Okay. Hi. Thank you. Good evening. It's Samantha Bassett. Thank you, Mr. Scarillo, for your presentation and your update on the trailers. I appreciated both of those very much. And Dr. Handrahan, thank you for your updates on the COVID situation at each meeting that you give. I hope that our district can, like many districts local to us already have, establish a COVID data reporting method for our schools, like Dr. Handrahan had mentioned, such as a dashboard on the website or a weekly update to the school community, indicating how many confirmed positive cases there are broken down by school, as well as how many students or staff members are in quarantine. Many districts local to us have done this from day one as it was in part of their restart plans. For example, Middletown and Point Pleasant Borough have dedicated sections on their websites reporting the data. Others like Ocean Township and Holmdel send out weekly emails from the superintendent that communicates the data and breaks it down by building. And I also know that Manasquan sends notifications to their entire school community for any confirmed positive cases, broken down by what building they're in, whether it was an employee or student, and when the individual was last in the building, even if they were not in the building during the contagious period. Reporting the data in one of these ways that other districts have chosen to do would ensure that information is coming directly from the source, rather than people getting upset that they're learning it second or third hand, or from their children when they get home from school, which is especially difficult for elementary school parents as their children, are younger and are communicating things to them, that you might not want to hear from a 7-year-old. Further, it would help parents make decisions that are in the best interests of their families, depending on their individual circumstances, including whether they would like their student to join the virtual school or transition to in-person learning, as well as whether they want to send their children on a bus that might not be socially distant at the elementary level, or drive them themselves, especially given what you said about us being in orange and the mandatory quarantines for presumed positive or symptomatic cases. It would also kind of let everyone in the community know where each school is at in terms of the possibility of needing to pivot to virtual instruction for any length of time in a particular building, as the primary school had to do last week. It would avoid people feeling like these decisions, which I know are never made lightly, and are made after much discussion within the district and the Department of Health, that they're not coming out of nowhere, as parents didn't know so many students or staff members were asked to quarantine or were out of the buildings. I know that the district is obviously already keeping track of this data and reporting it internally for both the building and district level, but I think it would be good if, sooner rather than later, that we can share this data with parents and staff, obviously protecting privacy and confidentiality issues, which these other districts have been able to do since school opened. Dr. Handerhan, since you've arrived, there's been a marked difference in the timeliness and detail of communication to families on important matters, and it's definitely appreciated. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay. Let's try this again.
Okay, I think I'm back. Am I back?
There you are. Yes, good evening.
I'm so sorry. I'm on an iPad instead of a computer and it didn't want to cooperate. And then I bumped myself off of it too. So I'm Christine
Just
Opegard.
give your name out there. Okay.
Yeah, Christine Opegard, WTEA Health and Safety Chairperson. I applaud hearing from the FNF tonight about the addition of 3 custodial, I'm going to call them long-term subs or floaters or whatever words you're using for it. And I think that's a good start. Although you are thinking about covering some of those holes, I should say filling in some of those holes that we have in the district, I truly don't believe that it's enough. I've spoken before at health and safety meetings. I've spoken before at these board meetings. The amount of time it takes during the day for the staff to keep every touch surface, every snack surface, every bathroom, et cetera, with limited staff or with the staff we had pre-COVID just isn't working. Now that we are moving to more indoor snack time, not outdoor snack time, as bad as it is, these poor kids have 10 minutes to get in, to eat and get out before the next class is already waiting to come in. Our custodians have to get in between those 2 classes without, any time between that. At the same time, they have to get every touch surface in every bathroom and every faculty bathroom and everything else. So I strongly urge you to consider adding additional custodians, as I've asked for before, at least 1 during the day at every building. I think it would make a huge difference. I think it would make us as the staff members and the WTA feel a little safer. Our custodians deserve so much so much appreciation and kudos for what we see them doing and just trying to stay on top of it. But as I've said before, you know, it's kind of like we're building the plane as we're flying it, and this is a part of the plane that needs to be added. Thanks.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
You too.
Hi, my name is Laura Bryan, resident of Wall Township. I would just like to reiterate everything that Ms. Bassett said. I completely agree that communication has been forthcoming. It is tremendously appreciated. I thank all of you for the tremendous amount of time and energy that you give to our children. I do feel as a parent and educator, it would truly help me to make a decision as to what I want to do with my own child who is currently in a quarantine state due to an exposure in school. I want to know how many of those positive cases have occurred in his building. You know, I would like to make an educated and informed decision. I'm also extremely concerned, and I did speak with Dr. Handrahan and building administration today about this. The quarantine children are receiving 1 hour of direct instruction per day. So my son was exposed in school, and while his peers are now getting 4 hours per day, it's about half of his class that's in school. And half are home, getting less than 1 hour a day, while his peers are receiving 4 hours of direct instruction per day. I feel like it's very inequitable. I'm very concerned that when he returned to school, he could wind up in a quarantine state again. I am aware of children who had that happen today. They returned to school from a 10-day quarantine and were placed on quarantine immediately again. So again, I tremendously thank everyone for their time. I just am very concerned and want to know at what point do we decide if a classroom, as Ms. Bassett said, at what point do we know when a classroom should be virtual or a building? I'm just a very concerned parent. So again, thank you so much for your time and energy.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
You too. Yes, I'm sorry.
Good evening. Sorry. Phone caller 609.
Hi, my name is Trish Peratt. I have 4 children, 2 in the district right now. I'm calling because I'd like to also agree with what Samantha Bassett said and the previous caller. Yesterday, I was informed by my 7-year-old that half of her class was absent because they're being quarantined. With that being said, she had already been exposed, obviously, to whoever was in the class. Now, I understand that the children who are being quarantined are the ones who sit near them in the classroom, but this doesn't include children who sit next to her at snack or sit next to the presumed positive child at snack. It doesn't include gym class, kids who are around in gym class. So she had 11 kids absent from her class, and I was being told by my 7-year-old. The other part that was extremely disturbing today was that we found out from a parent that her child has tested positive. And I'm very thankful that she decided to inform the parents of the other students in the classroom, but this communication came from the parent, not from our school. And when I questioned our school about it, it's because they haven't been in school in the last couple days. I mean, I just feel like this is such an airborne virus that may not show signs for up to, 10 days. And we're only informing parents if they sit near the child within the last couple days. I would like to have the choice to know that it's, you know, there's positive cases in the classroom and to make a decision whether or not I want to send my child to school. So I really feel like the communication, if it could be put on the website or something about, you know, which grades are being affected in which schools. It's not breaking HIPAA by putting down numbers. You're not identifying anybody. And I think if we can have more custodians, that sounds what the teachers are asking for. That would definitely benefit everybody. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good evening. All right. Anybody else for public comment? All right. Seeing none, public comment is closed. Dr. Hanrahan, did you have anything else that you wanted to add?
No, just that with respect to quarantines, there are very, you know, but behind every story, there's a lot of detail. And some people are choosing to quarantine individually following Thanksgiving. So we also, I did not mention that in when I spoke in the beginning. So we also have that piece of the pie as well. And again, it's really important for parents to share with us that if their children become positive during a quarantine, that the schools are made aware. I just want to make sure, because we can only communicate what we know. And that's really important. The schools, our goal is to work hand in hand with the families so that we can provide the information that is needed. And we are on the phone with the local health department many times a day to discuss issues with them to make sure that we are keeping our kids safe. So with that, I will turn the microphone back over to you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Dr. Mr. Gartz.
Thank you. Dr. Hanrahan, do you know the total number of kids in the district that have been tested as positive? How many received, or how many were suspected to have gotten the virus from in-school, communication or presence?
Okay. As far as children,
students,
I guess. So as far as students are concerned, I have absolutely no knowledge of any students I guess for lack of a better term, catching the virus at school. We have the number of students that quarantine and the number of students that have tested positive is extremely low. And we have a lot of kids quarantining. And so that is especially the case since we are in orange, because as I indicated earlier, that, one cough and a student coughing in school can have a tremendous quarantining impact on all of, on students that are in close contact with them. And the numbers are high. We have classrooms with personal quarantining that's taking place because of personal exposure in their private worlds. We have students that are quarantining because, like I said, a student perhaps had a headache in class or a symptom that would warrant multiple quarantines. There are a lot of factors, and the number of quarantines, it's a moving target. We as a school district are obligated to report the number of positive COVID cases, to, not by name, but by incidence and transmission, to the New Jersey Department of Education. Quarantines, that is not the case with quarantines. So I do want to make that clear.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Any comments? Okay, seeing none, could we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Gartz, second by
A second.
Aaron. All in favor? Okay, great. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening, and everyone, please continue to be safe.
Good night, all.